All right. We are back at the podcast studio in Belmar at Grit Won't Quit. We have a very special guest on today, another Belmar guy. We have Max from Amped Fitness. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, man. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
We're practically neighbors.
Yep.
You know, most times we have people from out of town coming into to be on the podcast, and this guy is walking distance from our office, so it's nice to have a local Belmar guy on the show. So let's get right into it. Amped Fitness. You have 2 locations. You're opening a third. But how'd you come up with the name?
So I've raced motocross my whole life. I'm not a very typical team sport type of person. I liked going fast, cars, bikes, the whole thing. So when I was 4 years old, my dad put me on a motorcycle, and it just became my whole world. It was like my favorite thing on the planet. Obviously in school and stuff like that, you try this sport, that sport, but nothing really did it for me quite like the bikes. So I ran with that for many years. It is, unfortunately a dangerous sport, especially as you start to get better. You're moving faster, the bikes get bigger, there's a little bit more risk involved. I was qualifying for a national that was down in Tennessee. So this is like a big event. People come from all over the place. This particular race was in just outside of Pittsburgh. So we were a little far from home at the time. I'm originally from New York.
Where in New York?
New Rochelle.
Okay, cool. I grew up on Long Island.
Okay. So yeah. So just outside of the Bronx.
Yep.
And, whatever. So at the time, the drive to Pittsburgh was a little bit of a hike. It was my dad, me, my brother, and myself. That was typically like
was the race team.
Normal crew. Yeah. So we went out there. Everything was, I feel like anytime tragedy strikes, things are always going great up to that point. And it was like any other race weekend. I felt really good. Everything was, gelling well. And then, things turned quick. I ended up hitting a jump kind of the wrong way. I get thrown from my bike, and it didn't really look like anything too crazy. They have medics at the track, so we went, got checked out. The medic even said, he was like, it doesn't really look that bad. Maybe like, a sprained ankle, but I think you'll be okay, whatever. I've had, up to that point, I'd had other injuries before. And so I've kind of been around, the game a little bit. And this one just like would not stop. Like the pain was just getting more intense by the hour. Looking back, obviously, now I can kind of see why that was. But at the time, it was just like, what is going on? So we rushed right to the hospital. They started running a bunch of tests, x-rays, all this stuff. And they found out that I had severed 2 major arteries in my right leg. Okay. So there wasn't, not enough blood getting to the foot. Long story short, I was in the hospital for 4 weeks, 1 month. And we had to make the decision to amputate my right leg. Luckily, I have my knee. I'm really only missing my foot. But that was, at that point when I was 18 years old, I became an amputee. Fast forward now to the gym situation. A lot of stuff happened in between, but I always knew, my passion even from being a young kid was I wanted to do something health and fitness related. And I knew like, okay, when I get to that chapter in this book of life, I'm naming this gym Amped.
I love the name.
Yeah.
I didn't know prior when I got the, when you filled out the form to be on the podcast, I didn't know what Amped meant, but like now it makes a lot more sense. And it's cool. It's a really cool name now.
Thank you. Yeah, we try to do a little play on words.
Yeah.
It's like awesome. A little amped up. You get hyped up,
Yep.
but it's also, the amputee aspect of it. So it's really awesome to see how the brand has grown over the last couple years. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes I'll just go to like the shop right in Belmar and I'll see somebody that has like the hoodie on or whatever.
Isn't that a great feeling?
It's awesome. There's no amount of money or anything that can replace that feeling.
We did a video on my social media not too long ago, and Andrew's girlfriend works at a gym, and she came home and said to him, "Oh yeah, someone's wearing a Wingman shirt there." And we're trying to figure out who it might be.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's awesome. Like someone
awesome.
just wearing a Wingman shirt, like
Awesome. Like showing support. And, so that's been
great. That's cool.
It's been great.
So after this accident happens, like, how did your life just change? Like, it changed overnight.
Yeah. It was a big decision to have to be made as an 18-year-old kid. I mean, up to that point, like, I'm going to prom next week. I'm going, college is going to be in a couple months. Like, I'm thinking everything is kind of...
Did you have any, like, depression or any sort of issues coming off of that?
I definitely did.
Mm-hmm.
There was the biggest issue initially was, and again, I kind of do this now with my business. The way I kind of like live my life is I like to just take things one step at a time. There's no point in worrying about 10 steps down the road. What do we have right in front of us?
Accomplish this first task.
Exactly. Like, you don't want to, you're thinking about running when you haven't even walked yet. So I'm like, and that's been a big, lesson in my life. But initially I was, okay, well, I got to get out of the hospital. We got to figure out what's going on. Obviously I'm getting a prosthetic, but that was even a little, a couple months down the line. Am I still going to college? I'm obviously not going to go away to school. Now I got to be a little closer. So we're making all these decisions as a family initially. Coming out of the hospital, you're just on like a high. It's like, okay, I'm just happy to not be in there anymore.
Sure.
I'm going home to my family, home cooked meals, visiting people. So the depression doesn't really set in until, and again, this is just in my experience, but it took a while. It took a while for it to really kind of hit me that, like, okay, this is an injury that you're never going back to how you were. Like, this is a permanent injury.
We got to move forward with this new life.
Yeah, it's not like you broke your leg and 6 months you're going to be fine.
Sure.
This is like your life has changed. So it took a while for that to kind of set in, but thankfully I've had, at the time, my parents are split up now, but at the time they were together.
Yep.
My dad is very handy. He's always been like the mechanic, worked on the bikes. He looked at the leg as just another thing to kind of work on. My mom, on the emotional side of things, she was very good about kind of being like my rock. And, when you're a young 18-year-old kid, you don't really want to feel those emotions. You kind of like just push everything down. But at some point, you bottle them up, that bottle opens. Yeah. So she was there when I needed her. And I always like to say, like, they each kind of played their part.
They played their role in
the
your recovery.
Exactly. And obviously I would not be where I am without them and their guidance and support.
So 12 years later, you're on the Jersey Shore from New Rochelle, Lower Westchester County.
Yep.
So, like, what made you come to the Jersey Shore?
So we've always had houses in Lavalette.
Okay.
Growing up. Some of the best memories I ever had as a kid was like down in Ortley Beach, and we're going to the bay, we're going to the ocean. So I've always had a big affinity with this area. And in 2015, so at that point I had been an amputee for already 3 years. Mm-hmm. My mom goes, she's like, I got this apartment in Belmar. She's like, you got to come down. You're going to love it. And at the time, I had just turned 21. So, like
Belmar 21.
Yeah. But I didn't know at the time. I didn't put it together that was like
that you're in the hottest spot.
Like this is like the best scenario possible. So I took her some convincing to get me to go down because, granted, I didn't know anybody down here. I'm like, all right, what am I going to go out by myself? Whatever. So finally, she gets me to come down. She had the apartment for maybe a month or two at that point. I think it was like 4th of July weekend. And she's like, just come down, trust me. I didn't know, we still have the apartment now. It's her deal. I live in Brick now, but it's on 17th and Ocean. So it faces the ocean. It's like the most perfect place on the planet for a 21-year-old kid, like a dream. Oh, yeah. I'm like 2 feet from DJs. So I go down there and, 4th of July weekend is insane. And
you don't
I'm
even
like,
need friends.
No, you could make friends in 2 feet
seconds.
out of your house. So I come down. I'm like, what even is this place? And from there, I was just like, I
Did
was
you ever
like,
go
I'm
back?
not leaving. No.
No.
I literally, that 4th of July weekend, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that, I moved all my stuff down. And at that point, I was going to school. I was like, you know what? I'll claim I'm a resident. And I went to school at Brookdale.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up just staying there. I finished I got a bachelor's in psychology at Kane.
Uh-huh.
And that whole time, I had lived there up until 2022. No, 2023. I had to get my own apartment in Manasquan just because things were getting a little tight. It's a 1-bedroom, so I was like, all right, this is my time to. So I had the apartment, and then I just bought a house in February in Brick with my fiance. Thank you. So.
And you met a fiance.
And I managed to pick up a great girl along the way. So
that's fantastic. I love to hear that. That's great. So now let's get into a little bit business.
Sure.
So you're down here, and you decide I'm going to open a gym. How did that start?
So, again, I always like to think that, God, the higher power, whatever it is, puts you in places where you're supposed to be, and there's a path for everybody, and the signs are there. If you choose to ignore them, that's yours. But I try to just live my life with very open eyes, and before I make decisions, if I see certain things that resonate with me, I'm like, okay, that was a sign that I'm supposed to do, whatever the case may be. And I kind of live like that. And so for the longest time, like I mentioned, I wanted to do something in healthcare. I wanted to be a physical therapist because I was like, I spent so many months in physical therapy. I'm like, this is what I know. It's kind of close to training as far as you're helping people recover. So I was like, okay, that's going to be my jam. It was so hard to get into any schools anywhere. I'm not the brightest, bulb academically. So for me, I was like, I couldn't get into any school. It was just a very overwhelming, experience.
Process.
Yeah. And just very off-putting. I was like, all right, maybe this is not meant to be, whatever the case may be. So at the time that I was in school, I was working at a gym in Freehold. And he was like, listen, and I had spoke with the owner. I was like, look, this is my plan to be this, go to physical therapy school, whatever. He's like, I'm planning on opening, and actually, believe it or not, it was right across the street, from you guys. It was going to be where it's one of them now, one of these. He was planning on opening in this strip mall. Mm-hmm. And it was February. We had this conversation in February of 2020. So obviously,
right before COVID.
Yeah. So a month, 2 months later, the whole world's a different place. Obviously, he's not opening a new location. Sure. Everything kind of, goes to hell. And so I go from, potentially helping him open this gym and manage it, whatever the case may be, to now it's figure out how to make $100 a week or whatever. It was like I had nothing. So I'm like, okay. I tried to get a little nifty, and I put an ad in a local Facebook group. I didn't even know it was an ad. I just kind of threw something in there, and I was like, I'll train you at your house. Thought nothing of it. I checked the next morning, and it's got tons of comments. People like, hey, come to my house. I have a group of mostly moms and middle-aged women, but all in Wall, Belmar. I was going to Bradley, and
but that's a great area,
fantastic. It couldn't have been.
Wall is such a nice big town,
yes,
and the surrounding towns around it. It's prime.
It was perfect, perfect. Like I said, it was destined to be. And again, I'm from New York. I don't know anybody really around here. I'd only been down here a couple years, and all these people. Wall's a pretty tight knit. It's a big city, but it's pretty tight knit. And, you go to one person's house. Oh, I know this other lady. I'm going to refer you to her. Yeah. Go there. So little did I know I was building up this little client list.
Yep.
All summer 2020, I was just going house to house to house to house. $10 a person. That was all I charged, whether there was 2 people there or 10 people there. I was like, this is the price. Just going. And again, I didn't know anything about any of this. I was just like, this is what made sense to me.
Yeah.
It starts to get too cold to do anything outside, so I signed. Actually, it wasn't even a lease. It was a month-to-month rental space in Manasquan, across from the new CVS, an old tan building. I was on the 3rd floor. This was so technically Amped started January 4th of 2021.
Okay.
That was when I had, okay, like this is an official location. I'm not going to people's houses. They're coming to me. I saved up all that money from the summer before. I put it all into the gym, bought all this equipment, and I was like, let's just give it a shot. Again, like month to month, I still didn't know what my long-term path was, but I was just looking at the steps right in front of me. My first goal with that location was just get it to 50 members. And we just, one step at a time, little by little. To this day, I don't know how those people trusted me in that space. There was no, CO like checking to make sure things are good, anything like that. It was just kind of like, all right, we're going. Yeah.
And they got a little cardio on the way up
Exactly.
and the way down.
Yes. A little burnout on the way. Yes, exactly. So
you got them warmed up on the way up and on the way down there.
So I was in there for about a year and maybe 3 months. And then we opened our first, I call it the first real location, because at that point it was, okay, I got to sign a lease. We're doing the insurance. We're doing, more of a commitment, a nicer gym. I finally painted the walls. We did, the whole thing. And that was my Brielle location. It was right down the street from the Manasquan one. So everybody just kind of moved, a couple minutes over. Yeah, that was it.
And you said that's by Mariners Cove.
Yes. So,
all right. So anybody that knows Brielle knows where Mariners Cove is. Everybody, I think everybody's had breakfast there at least once.
Yep.
So you're right by there.
Yeah, they're my neighbor. So
all right, cool.
We, and then I opened that one up, and the next goal was, all right, we want to try to get to 100 members. Once I kind of opened that location, it became like, okay, this is like my job now, and it just like blew up. It was like people were coming in left and right. The gym started to fill up. Within like a couple months, we had like all of our classes full. And I rode that wave all of summer 2022. And then 2023, I was like, all right, we're going to give it another go. And I opened the second location right here in Belmar.
Yep. On 7th.
On 7th, yep. 7th in Maine.
7th in Maine.
And I still was living in Belmar at the time, so that kind of worked nice because, obviously it was super close. That was a bit of a bigger investment. The space was bigger. I still, to this day, say that was kind of like the ego gym. I was like, I wanted everything to be perfect. I didn't want, I was like, okay, look, these are the colors. I wouldn't buy certain equipment if it was a different color. Like, I would pay more for it to be this color. So again, I had this mindset of I want this to be exactly how I want it to be.
Listen, I call this wingman blue. And anytime we paint the wall, it has to be that same Benjamin Moore color.
Yep.
I have a picture of it on my phone so that if we look at anything, it has to be. I get how anal you can get about
yes.
that. Yes.
And it's one of those things that it really only matters to you, but it matters
so
a
much.
lot. Yes. So that was my ego gym.
Yep.
And we built that gym up to now it's got like 200 members. They both have about 200 members. So we got 400 members between the two of them. And then just 2 weeks ago, I signed a lease on another one in Ocean. I was hoping to do it in 2024, but that was a big year of, learning a lot of lessons for me, leadership and, being able to put the right people in the right spot is obviously very important. And I learned that lesson and still, learning that. But now I'm excited for this new one.
When do you plan to open that?
I'm hoping if we can, the build out process is not as tremendous as it was for Belmar. So I'm hoping that we can be ready by July.
Awesome.
I think if I boogie, I should be good.
The nice thing is now in Ocean, I actually live in Ocean Township, so I know it pretty well. It's more of a year-round community. Where Belmar, you have a number of seasonals.
Yep.
In Brielle, you have a number of seasonals.
Yep.
Brielle's, I think, a little more year-rounders.
Yeah.
But you have some seasonals in both those areas. In Ocean, you're not going to have seasonals.
Right.
You're going to have just everyday people. And you said you buy Wegmans?
Yeah.
Which has great traffic.
We're a little bit, so we're on the same side as Wegmans, which I believe is this coming like going south
Yeah.
side. We're a little bit north of there, which again, to your point, as far as traffic goes, that's the best.
Are you by the Staples over there?
There's a yes.
Staples, and there's like
Staples,
a
there's
Rockstar Nails.
Yes.
Like
yes.
then not Plaza, but that Plaza connects to the same parking lot as Wegmans.
Yeah, I think we're like a couple minutes north of the Wegmans. So we're not in that same, but very close.
Yeah. All right, cool.
But yeah, there's so much stuff, within like being 30 seconds of that road, you're past 50 different things.
There's a lot on, and there's a lot of construction going on over there too, which is nice. So it's a great area for you to expand to.
It. Yeah, I think it's really going to be good. And this one, I'm kind of switching gears a little bit with this one as far as like, okay, I'm focused on let's make this one as perfect and as profitable as possible.
Yep.
I'm trying to roll everything out. I feel like I'm a little bit more, I've learned what I needed to, within that time. So
let me ask you, are you starting to think about a franchise model? Are we allowed to ask that question on camera?
Yeah, of course.
You said you were an open book.
Yeah,
before, so.
Listen, I love that question. It's one of those things that I'm like, my mind could, change with that. It's a whole different hat. You go from being a trainer to then, okay, you own the gym. That's a new hat. To then you own 2 gyms. That's a new hat. To now it's going to be 3. So I feel like I would love to answer your question. I don't know what work that entails. I'm sure it's tremendous, but if it's, how cool would it be to be having Amped in, California and people are like, oh, well, why is it named Amped? And they're like, yeah, the guy that owns all this, he has 1 leg.
Yep.
So
that would be really.
I love the vision.
Put that on the vision board.
Yeah.
I always say, and if you've watched this podcast, I say it's moving the goal line. Like, you just keep moving the goal line. Like, again, if I go back to when I started 16 years ago, if you said to me we would be having a podcast, I say no way. Like if you said to me we'd have 2 locations, I said no way. I was planning on just working out of my home, just kind of having to, and then as time went on, I was like, oh, I bought a bigger house in Brick 15 years ago, or I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, because I was like, oh, I'm never going to have employees. I'm never going to have an office. I said to my wife, let's live in a bigger house. And since we both have home offices, rather than being in a smaller house, we did that. I think I was in my house. I think I was in my brick house about 6 months to a year, and then I was in an office in Brielle. So I totally get it. And we've had some we've had some stopping grounds that were the same. My first office was in Brielle. Now I'm in Manasquan, but and then we have Belmar. So we have some, and then I have my house in Ocean now. You live in Brick.
Yeah,
there's a lot of similarities.
Exactly.
But we are in the process right now of doing a franchise system.
Are you?
So we're going to be rolling out franchises probably in July. So I'll keep you posted on it.
Please do.
There is a lot of work involved. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to kind of start making a playbook.
Yeah.
Like, again, the playbook's in my head. Getting this onto paper is hard.
It's the hardest thing.
It's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But I think once it's all done, it's going to be easier. It's just getting there.
Yeah.
And getting there while you're running a business. Like, we're busy, and, the franchise, we hired a company to help us, and they're like, hey, Tom, you want to have a meeting this afternoon? I'm like, dude, I got 10 other things to get done today. But, it is, I think when it's all said and done, it'll be better for everybody. And I think, again, I've made a statement to my team and to the franchise team and, internally that says I want to have 50 systems within 5 years.
Wow.
And again, there's some guys that have 100 systems in 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think 50 in 5 is a good pace. So it's 10 a year. So it's like it's a little less than 1 a month. So it's not like we have to, go crazy and run around like chickens without our heads. So I think that that's our plan. But as it comes to be, I will keep you
please do
up to date on
exciting.
how it rolls out. And again, if you have 3, I feel like you're on your way to this.
We're trying.
And again,
man.
you get one guy who believes in you and that wants to back this name and back this business. It becomes even easier.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Tom, it's just like you're putting the what do we call it? Like the systems in place.
The systems in place is the hardest thing. And again, for entrepreneurs, for guys like you and me that are like, let's just do it. Like you just kind of get in there and do it.
That's how I am.
So like, there's no project that like you're like, again, we're not built for
Yeah.
like the corporate America where like you do this,
Right.
this, and this. I left corporate America 'cause it was too slow for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying like I got to put these processes in place because the next person that comes in, if I'm not here, how
Yep.
do they do it? They
Yep.
take this playbook and go.
Yep.
And
Yep.
again, the model. So after 3 systems, you know
you start
what
to
needs
learn
to
it.
happen.
Yeah, so that's the plan. I think it's definitely something that I would love to, down the line, if I see it, like you said,
Yeah.
vision board, I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. There's 10 of these things all over the place, or whatever the case may be. I'm ready for it. I'm eager. Like,
Yeah.
I
and I think
feel
you have a
like-
great story.
Thank you.
The story, again, you could have your life at 18 could have just been a downhill spiral.
Yeah.
You could have felt bad for yourself. You could have just gone into like a depression and drinking and alcohol
Yep.
and whatever else, and it could have been a downward spiral. You took it and you kind of took the bull by the horns and said, "Let's make something better here."
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the story. That there's no, it would have been easy, and no one would have looked down upon you if you just
Right.
went into a depression and said like this is the way it's going to be and
Yeah.
not been it. But instead, you took it and you're running a great business.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's
that.
awesome. I'm
Thank
really
you.
happy for
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
I'm thrilled that Hanger came in and found us
Yeah,
and said,
absolutely.
"Call these guys because this is good." So, kind of what are some of the struggles and hustles of owning multiple businesses? And again, what made you think that now is the time for that third one? I know you said you wanted to open in 24, but like, what made you realize like, yeah, I got this?
So, I think that while it's good to, obviously, you want to be prepared, you want to like try to sharpen your sword as much as you can before you go to battle. But I also think there's a such thing as too much preparation, which I think stops a lot of people. It's like,
Too much analysis.
Yeah. And I'm sure like, when you started the podcast, like you don't have, a fancy studio and equipment and this and that. You kind of build, you got to just get something out there, something on paper.
You want to laugh?
Sure.
One of our first podcasts, shout out to Aaron Levine. Andrew and I we're taping, we're recording, we're using an iPhone.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The storage got full on the iPhone while we were shooting this guy who has a great business up in West Long Branch. He has an insurance company, and he runs a really good operation.
Yeah.
And he comes on, and Andrew comes into my office, and we're in Manasquan. He goes, "Tom, we got a problem. I don't have Aaron's podcast." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Storage filled. We didn't have a camera. We didn't have like
Yes,
we were working off the little mics, So that's what happens. But again, I called Aaron and I was like, "Yo, we got to do another podcast."
Yeah.
And we had a totally different conversation the second time, but it was great. And we laugh about it. When he came to our 100th podcast show, he's like, "Has anyone else had to do it twice?" And I said, "No, you were the only one." But along the way, we've picked up some new stuff and made it better. But that's the way it is.
You wouldn't, if you don't take that first step, which a lot of people,
They're scared.
Yeah. And so I always say, I'm like, with the new location and whatever, I'm like, I don't want to be the reason, like myself, that the business doesn't grow. Like my limiting belief, whatever I come up with in my head, I don't want it to be that, okay, that business didn't grow because I didn't have the, the guts to kind of take that chance. And when, I was looking at a couple different spots, I was looking at one in Brick, and somebody pitched, obviously like now there's so many members at the gym, people are kind of knew that I was looking. So I had a couple people that were putting some feelers out, which I think is also good. You use the, your network, and somebody sent me one and they were like, "Hey, look, like this is the price they want. It's in Ocean." And at the time when he sent it to me, I didn't feel like I was 100% ready. This was like maybe 2 months ago. I'm like, all right, I'm probably not 100% ready for this, but everything else lined up. The numbers were great as far as the rent. The build out was minimal. The space was awesome. I'm like, this space checks all the boxes. If I got to put a little, bit of a fire under my butt to kind of get my wheels turning, then this will do it if I sign this lease. So I'm like, you know what? We'll step out of the comfort zone again, and we're going to figure it out. And
I love it.
How I basically live my life.
You got to get out of the comfort zone.
You have to.
That's awesome.
You can't grow if you're too scared to just kind of, how easy would it be to just, okay, well, I'm happy with where I'm at, which is fine too, if that's what you like and you're good where you are. But I'm always like, okay, like what's the next opportunity that we can chase? And you need to be uncomfortable to get there.
I love it. I love it. This is a great conversation. I'm glad that you came
Thank
on
you.
today. So as we wrap up, let people know where they can find you online, on
Sure.
Insta, on social, etc. So that anyone that's looking to either learn more about your story, learn more about the business,
Sure.
get trained, how do they find you?
Cool. So, 3 locations. The first one in Brielle, again, these are all Amped Fitness. The address is 718 Union Ave, Suite 2, Brielle, right next to Mariners Cove. Our Belmar location is right diagonal from St. Rose. That's 611 Main Street. And then our Ocean location, kind of close to the Wegmans. I got to get a little more familiar with that area. But the address is 1800 State Route 35 South, Ocean. And we try to be everywhere. Instagram, we're Amped Fitness NJ. We're posting on there all the time. I have my beautiful fiance. She's handling all our Instagram stuff now, and she's been doing a great job. Website is ampedfitnessnj.com. I'm Max. I usually just put my personal number out there, 914-282-1570. You can call me anytime.
Another guy from New York. He didn't change his number when he
Nah,
got here like me.
You got to keep the
New
some
York
things
strong.
never change. And we just specialize in strength training. If you're looking to, get in great shape but don't really know how to do it or have the right kind of place, we can be your home. That's pretty much our bread and butter. And take a chance. We'll get you there.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for
Thank
a great
you.
conversation. This was awesome. I'm inspired by you,
Thank
and I
you.
wish you nothing but the best of luck going forward.
I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.